A business class seat from London to Singapore costs around £6,000, but the economy seat a few rows behind costs £800. Both passengers breathe the same cabin air, fly the same 13 hours, and arrive at the same gate in Changi. But only one of them is actually making the airline any money. And if the business class cabin doesn't sell out, this entire flight loses money. A 350-person plane, 13 hours in the air, thousands in operating costs, and the whole flight depends on a few dozen seats up front. To understand why, you have to look at what it costs to fly one of these things across the globe. Singapore Airlines runs 4 flights daily between London and Singapore, and the route is so lucrative that before COVID it was bringing in over $2 million in revenue every single day. And yet, the math on a single flight is terrifyingly tight. One of their Boeing 777s burns roughly 7,500 kilos of fuel per hour, which over a 13-hour flight works out to about 97 tons of fuel. At current prices, the fuel bill for one direction can be up to $78,000, and that only accounts for about 30% of the total cost. Before the plane even pushes back from the gate at Heathrow, the airline has already paid the airport £24 for every departing passenger, which for a full wide-body comes out to around £8,300 on its own. Then, there's the slot at Heathrow, which operates at 99% capacity. That alone adds about $20,000 in hidden cost to every rotation. Slots at Heathrow are so valuable that back in 2016, Oman Air bought a single pair from Kenya Airways for $75 million, just for the right to take off and land once a day. Now, the plane is in the air, every country it crosses charges it. Singapore Airlines isn't flying over Russia on this route, which means the plane flies through Belgium, Germany, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, Turkey, Pakistan, India, Thailand, and Malaysia. Each one of those countries charges a navigation fee based on the weight of the aircraft and the distance flown. All in, those navigation charges work out to somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000 one way. Then there's the crew, because a 13-hour flight legally requires what's called an augmented crew. Under European rules, 2 pilots aren't enough, so you need 3. 1 captain, 1 first officer, and a second officer who relieves them during cruise so the others can rest in a crew bunk. Singapore Airlines captains earn somewhere up to 355,000 Singapore dollars a year, and a 777 on this route carries around 13 to 15 cabin crew on top of that. When the flight lands in Singapore, nobody's flying home immediately because the minimum rest period has to equal or exceed the duty period, which means hotel rooms and ground transport for 18 to 20 people at both ends of every rotation. Add maintenance, catering, insurance, and depreciation on the aircraft itself. Stack all of that up, and one single flight from London to Singapore costs the airline somewhere up to $284,000, one way. That is the price the ticket revenue has to fill. So now let's talk about how that price actually gets filled, because this is where long haul gets genuinely counterintuitive. McKinsey published a detailed breakdown earlier this year of what a single long-haul wide-body flight actually earns, and they use London to New York as the example, but the principle is the same. On that flight, economy class was 192 seats, premium economy was 35 seats, and business class was 31 seats. But how much revenue do you think those 31 seats in business class made? The answer is 41%. Those 31 seats up front generated more ticket revenue than 192 seats in the back. When you combine business with premium economy, those premium cabins took up about a quarter of the plane and brought in nearly 58% of the revenue. The McKinsey model landed on an operating profit of about $21,000 for the whole flight, a 12% margin. Strip out the premium cabins, and that flight doesn't earn $21,000. It loses around $84,000. Even packing the economy cabin to the rafters at 100% load doesn't change the outcome. The numbers still don't work. A business class seat isn't really a seat, it's a floor plan. On a 777, a single business class suite occupies the same space as 3 or 4 economy seats, and the seat itself can cost the airline $100,000 to $300,000 just to buy and install. First-class suites have gone as high as $1 million apiece. The meal runs about 10 times what economy gets, and the crew ratio sits at roughly 1 flight attendant for every 6 to 12 premium passengers, compared to 1 for every 50 back in economy. What airlines have figured out is that the highest earning cabin per square foot isn't actually business class, it's premium economy. Lufthansa found that premium economy generates 33% more revenue per square foot than regular economy, and even 6% more than business class, which is why they called it a money-generating machine. American Airlines has called it the most profitable use of square footage on their entire widebody. The industry-wide numbers tell the same story. According to IATA, premium cabins account for about 7% of total passenger kilometers globally, but generate roughly 20% of passenger revenue, and on long-haul specifically, that share climbs much higher. In the fourth quarter of 2025, Delta Airlines hit a milestone that had never happened before in the airline's roughly 100-year history, when premium cabin revenue overtook economy cabin revenue for the first time ever. United flew a record 27.4 million premium seats last year, and their newest 787s are configured with 62% of the seats in premium cabins. Even Southwest, the airline famous for one cabin and no assigned seats, has announced that premium seating is coming, which brings us to the real reason the Airbus A380 died. The plane was supposed to be the future: 4 engines, 2 full decks, over 500 seats on some configurations. Airbus bet something like 25 billion euros on the idea that the world was going to funnel everyone through mega hubs, and the first commercial flight was a Singapore Airlines A380 from Singapore to Sydney in October 2007. Singapore was the launch customer, and they loved it, but the problem was always the 500 seats, because the plane only works if you can fill it. Filling 500 seats with enough premium passengers, day after day, on most of the world's routes, turned out to be nearly impossible. Engine technology overtook it too, with the 787 and the A350 arriving with roughly 20 to 25% lower fuel burn per seat. Former Airbus sales chief John Leahy admitted that Airbus had been blindsided by engine manufacturers, and a Reuters source put it more bluntly, calling the A380 an aircraft that frightens airline CFOs because the risk of not selling all those seats is just too high. Airbus delivered the final A380 in December 2021 with a lifetime total of 251 built. Compare that to the A350 with over 1,560 orders, or the 787 with over 2,250 orders. The market voted, and the result was decisive. That's exactly why Singapore Airlines is doing what it's doing right now. From July 2026, one of their daily London flight switches from the 777 to an A350, likely debuting their new $1.1 billion Singapore dollar cabin refit. The A350 burns about 5,800 kilos of fuel per hour, roughly half what the A380 consumes. On their Singapore to New York route, the longest scheduled flight in the world at nearly 19 hours, they fly a special A350 version with only 161 seats, 67 in business class, and 94 in premium economy, with no economy class at all. Because on an 18-hour flight, the back of the plane doesn't pay. IATA's Director General Willie Walsh put the whole industry's reality into one line at the end of last year when he told an audience that Apple will earn more selling an iPhone cover than the $7.90 airlines will make transporting the average passenger. That's the long-haul business. A 350-person plane, 13 hours in the air, a crew of 20, a $250,000 fuel bill, and the whole thing rides on the people up front who paid 10 times more for their seat. The flight isn't the business. The front of the plane is the business. Everyone behind the curtain is just along for the ride.